All right. I like, as always, to begin by welcoming our guests this evening, both of those who are in our chamber and also online. I now call to order the March 4th, 2021 regular Board of Aldermen meeting. So if you would please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Alderman Rucker.
Here.
Alderman Osteen.
Here.
Alderman Walker.
Here.
Alderman Ross.
Here.
Alderman Becker.
Here.
Alderman Rose.
Here.
Mayor Alvery.
Here. We do have a quorum. First item is always mayor's communication, and this evening I'd just like to share a few comments with you from a conference call that I had with the governor earlier this week regarding COVID. Just some facts that I thought were interesting and I think good news for our state and our community. The state will initially receive 50,000 Johnson & Johnson one-shot vaccines. Some of these actually will be used during the mass vaccination this coming Sunday at School of the Osage, March the 7th. On March 15th, the state will begin moving to phase 3 in the scheduling of groups for the vaccination. So we are expanding that. One thing I thought was kind of interesting in a call that I was on today with the local emergency management group talking about this particular event, they're actually having some vacant spots. So they have actually gotten pretty much to the end of the list for Lake Region for those who qualify as of, the categories that we're in. So I think this is pretty exciting. On March 15th, the state will begin moving to phase 3 in the scheduling of groups for vaccination. Some statistics: last week, the state administered 225,000 shots. To date, the number is around 1.3 million, and that represents about 15% of our state's population. And for the last 7-day test period, Missouri ranks number 2 in the nation for the lowest number of tests reporting positive. So that's I think, all good news. Again, I mentioned this conference call that I was on. It dealt specifically with Camden County. We are down in the county to 85 active cases. And while that may sound like a large number, it is significantly down from the 400 and 500 we were dealing with at one time. So we have one resident in the hospital. So I think all of that's really, really good news for our COVID situation. We've come a long way in the year that we've had to deal with this. That's all I have this evening under Mayor's Communications. Our next item is Citizens Communications. This is time set aside on the agenda for citizens and visitors to address the mayor and board on any topic that is not a public hearing, and there are no public hearings on tonight's agenda. For those here in person, speakers will be restricted to 3 minutes unless otherwise permitted. Minutes may not be donated or transferred from one speaker to another. Visitors attending via online will be in listen-only mode. Any questions or comments from the mayor and board may be sent to the city clerk at tbethron@osagebeach.org no later than 10 a.m. on the board meeting days. And for us, that is the first and third Thursday of each month. Submitted questions and comments may be read during the citizens communication section of the agenda. The board and aldermen will not take action on any item not listed on the agenda, nor will it respond to questions, although staff may be directed to respond at a later date. The mayor and board of aldermen welcome and value input and feedback from our public. Is there anyone here this evening who would like to share with the board? Seeing none, we move on to our first item of business, which is the approval of the consent agenda. If the board desires, the consent agenda may be approved by a single motion. Tonight's agenda consists of the minutes of the Board of Aldermen regular board meeting, February 18th, 2021, and the March 4th, 2021 bills list. Are there any questions, comments, or proposed revisions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Alderman Morose, do I have a second? Alderman Walker, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda is approved. For the record, there is no unfinished business on tonight's agenda. So we move on to new business. Our first item of new business, request a motion to approve the preliminary plat for Robbins at the Water's Edge Condominium Subdivision. City Planner, please.
Good evening, everyone. Have kind of a one-stop shop for you tonight by way of some platting, a major subdivision. I'm quite sure you will recognize this from our last meeting when we approved the rezoning of the project. We do have the preliminary plat and the final plats tonight for you, and they have requested a first and second reading on the final plats, but we'll get to those in a minute. When we look at something like this, it is not unheard of to see the preliminary and the final plats come at the same time for typically like a single-family subdivision when what we're looking at is the lot. It is kind of atypical to see a condominium plat come together like this, but typically they have to build the buildings and then they do the final plat when they have the footing in the ground with those. In this particular situation, this is certainly unlike anything that we're going to typically see, okay? This project is already there. There is nothing to be built. It is there. They are just changing use groups from a rental resort to a transfer of title, private property condominium development. Obviously, there was no need for public improvement plans as the public improvements are already in the development itself. And with that, I took the preliminary plat that they had provided us to the Planning Commission with a recommendation for approval, and they forwarded it to you tonight with a recommendation to approve.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the board? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Alderman Becker, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Alderman Osteen, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Our next item is requesting both a first and second reading of Bill Number 20-06, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, approving the final plat for Robbins at the Water's Edge Condominium Subdivision, an extension of what we just talked about. City Planner.
Yes, Mayor, members of the board. Again, this is the final plat. The difference between the preliminary and the final plat is the final plat is what allows them to go ahead and transfer title to the individual units within the development. The project consists, or the development itself consists of 6 buildings and a common area that is part of the Robbins Resort proper. And they bring it to you tonight with a request to do the first and the second reading, which is not unheard of with platting, specifically in this situation when everything is there. They are ready to begin transferring title to those properties. From my understanding, they have a number of those already sold and are looking forward to getting signatures on those, I'm sure. Typically, what you will see if somebody asks for a first and second reading, we do not do that on things like rezonings, that type of thing, when there's public involvement, public hearing, and public input. That is not the case with plats. Plats either meet the subdivision code or they do not. And if it comes before you, it is my job to make sure that they do. So doing a first and second reading on a final plat is not something that is an issue typically. And I would recommend approval of that to you tonight for both the first and second reading. We took this to the Planning Commission at their last meeting with a recommendation to approve to them as well, and they forwarded it to you with a recommendation to approve.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve first reading?
Motion approved.
Alderman Ross, do I have a second? Alderman Morose, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? First reading passes. Second reading by title only of ordinance number 21.06, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, approving the final plat for Robbins at the Water's Edge Condominium Subdivision in Osage Beach, Camden County, Missouri. Are there any additional questions? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the second reading?
Motion to approve.
Alderman Rucker and Alderman Osteen is the second. Roll call, please.
Alderman Morose,
Yes.
Alderman Walker,
Yes.
Alderman Ross,
Yes.
Alderman Becker,
Yes.
Alderman Rucker,
Yes.
Alderman Osteen.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, City Planner. Second reading passes. Our next item requests a first reading of Bill Number 21-07, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute a contract with Evoqua Water Technologies, LLC, to provide odor control chemicals, ongoing maintenance, and to expand automated chemical feeding at 3 different sites in an amount not to exceed $158,000. Assistant City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the board. This is a one-year contract extension with Evoqua Water Technologies for the purchase of odor control chemicals, the ongoing maintenance of the odor control system, and the use of some of the pieces of the infrastructure in our system. We are adding automated chemical feeding to 3 sites that were previously manual feed chemicals. Automating chemical feed at these 3 sites will allow us to remotely control the chemicals from our desktops, from tablets, from phones. And it will also make the chemical feeding more consistent throughout our system, as opposed to the manual feed. One of the biggest reason why we are doing this is because of the inexperience that we have with our staff right now. When you do manual chemical feed, it is a highly technical process that takes a lot of training, and we just simply do, as you guys know, we have a very young sewer staff. We're gonna have a very challenging summer this year. And what my goal here is to try and make their job this summer a little easier. As you know, we are putting a higher emphasis on preventative maintenance this year. We want to try and change the way we are doing things from a reactive approach to a proactive approach. And so I want to make sure that the focus stays on the maintenance and upkeep of all the stations that we have out there in our system. And so what I'm trying to do with this is I'm trying to make it easier to do the odor control so that we can keep our focus on the preventative maintenance that we're trying so hard to put in place. I have reviewed all of the odor control purchases over the last 3 years, and I believe after looking at that I think we can probably do this for around $135,000. Now the budget that we have in place for odor control in 2021 is $158,000. I've asked, and they have allowed me to add 1 free day of training into this contract. So we're going to start with that. And then in addition to that, they're also going to allow us, they come down on a bi-weekly basis and check our odor control sites for safety and make sure the system is still running properly. But we still have to visit these sites on a weekly basis. But when they are down here, they are going to allow us to have our guys shadow them for the first 5, 6, 7 times they come down, so we can continue to gain that training. But with all that aside, you know, as I said, we don't have a staff member that has ever done this before. So I do have some concerns, and I want to make sure that we build in a little cushion so that if I need them in an emergency situation, or if I need to build in some extra training, I want that extra cushion above the 135 up to a not to exceed of the 158,000, which again is what we budgeted, so that I can make sure that we have a safety net for our guys, so that we have the ability to call Evoqua and say, hey, we need your help. I need you to come down and help us some more. I don't think any of us want to run into a situation this summer where we have more odor control complaints. For the most part, in the past, before we had this massive turnover in our department, we were doing pretty good with our odor control. We got it down pretty good. And so we want to try and keep it that way moving forward. And at the same time, we want to make it easier for our guys. and we want to provide them training. So that's what this one-year contract extension does. I recommend approval. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
All right, Mike, thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Yes,
Yes.
Alderman Morose.
Mike, I have a question. You said on this, obviously, a one-year contract, I can hardly talk. As the year goes on and everybody gets trained and things are running smoothly, and if you feel comfortable before that year is up, is there a penalty if we would cancel the contract? Do we have to give them a notice, or is it just solid 1 year regardless?
Well, I'm sure you guys know this, but you have a very good attorney on staff. And he makes me go to him with contracts every time, and he makes me go through the language with him. So we do have a 30-day out in this contract. And honestly, we're probably going to use that this year, because what I'd really like to do is bid this out and try and get some other bidders in and maybe lower the cost of this in the long run. We just can't afford to do that right now.
Right,
When we do
right.
that, it requires a lot of moving out the old company's equipment, moving in the new company's equipment. I don't want to do that in the middle of summer.
Yeah.
It would probably leave us with a small gap in odor control, and nobody wants that.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that. So my plan is to look at bidding this out over the winter, and then in the January timeframe next year, when we don't use near as much odor control, we would look at, if Evoqua wins the new contract, great. We don't have to make a lot of changes. But if they don't, and we do have to make a lot of changes, that's the time frame that we can have the time to go a few weeks without the odor control and make the changes that we need to if we end up switching vendors. But right now is not the time to do that. The time to do that is over the winter. And so the goal is to get this contract going, get us through the summer, get our really good new sewer foreman some experience with this stuff. Get the new public works operation manager that Gina and I are getting ready to hire, some experience with this stuff. And then involve them in that process and give them some ownership in that process over the winter and bid this out. And if we need to switch vendors, if we find a vendor that has better rates on equipment, on chemicals, that's great. We're gonna do that. But it's just, right now, it's just not the time to make those changes.
I understand. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Alderman Becker.
Mike, will the training cover the technical part of the, whatever you called it, the chemical?
Absolutely, absolutely. Right now, all of our equipment is winterized. So Evoqua has really gone above and beyond here. Before this contract even starts, they're coming out later this month. And they're gonna go ahead free of charge. They're gonna help us de-winterize all the equipment, put it back into place. A lot of the chemicals that we use will freeze in the winter, so we have to take them out of service. We do use one chemical, Odofos, that we still use at a couple of different sites over the winter, where we have some problem areas, but most of our odor control pumps and housings are all winterized and brought back to the shop over the winter. So they're gonna come out, they're gonna help us install that, and then once it's installed, as I stated, we're gonna get a full day training where we're gonna go to every site with the staff members that are gonna be in charge of handling the odor control chemicals. They're gonna show us how to do everything. They're gonna show us the ins, the outs, the things not to do, the things to do, all that. And then beyond that, when they come out and do their checks every 2 weeks, we're gonna send those 2 employees with them every time they do that to give them reinforcement in how this all works, to get them comfortable with using the chemicals, to get them comfortable with the equipment. So yes, sir, we are.
Thank you.
Tyler, any other questions?
No.
All right, anyone else? Alderman Ross.
So Mike, a couple things. One, this contract is, I'm sorry, how much more is it than the Evoqua contract we did last year from?
It is, the vocal contract that we did last year was $100,000. And we, yeah, $100,000, sir.
Okay. And while I understand and want to make sure that we get through the summer, okay, the reality still remains that this is more than double what we have spent in order control as few as 3 or 4 years ago. That at the same time, our personnel is up and our operating costs, our O&M are up. And so if we, somehow it should seem that if we're not having enough people and we're hiring it out, some of that should balance. And so I don't have an answer because I know you're shorthanded. I know that you don't have the experience that you need. And my hope, and to be quite clear expectation is that by next year, we're in much better shape to start reversing this trend. Because sooner or later, it's going to either affect what we can invest in this system or rates or both. And the bottom line is we're putting a lot of costs in the system very quickly. And so I'll support this. I have faith, but I'm very cautious. And I have full faith that you'll get that figured out as we go forward. Thanks.
Yes, sir. And you do have a good point, and I want to make it clear, when we rebid this out, if we can go back to manual feed, which is cheaper, we will, okay? But we just don't have the experience right now to do that, and I don't want to take that chance that we have those problems and deal with that. So that is entirely the plan, sir. Yes.
Could I comment on that real quick?
Sure.
While I understand manual feed is cheaper when it comes to odor control line on the budget, okay, there may be some math that says that because the machine's working and my guy's not down there, okay, because there's a cost to send him down there and to manually feed this, that kind of stuff, but we need to understand that what's the cost benefit analysis on that, okay? I mean, if it costs 50% more and that becomes $25,000 a year more than what it would to pay somebody, okay. But if it alleviates our savings, I have no problem adding costs in that take costs out. In other words, okay?
Sure.
Just overall adding the cost and the rate of growth is what I'm struggling with. So I'm not against automatic feeders. I'd just like to understand how much they're saving too, because surely they're saving something. Thanks.
Any other questions?
I just have a comment. I just want to say that the system that we have here has been working. It's been a long time, knock on wood, that since I've been down at Andy's and had to take my ice cream and go home. So for those who don't recall those days, this is, I don't like to spend lots of money, but let me tell you what, this is worth it because that drives tourists away. So, thank you.
And this automation actually will save us on man hours as far as having to go out to the different locations that are not automated now and have to, work that. There is a cost benefit analysis. We just, at this point, Mike could get into it, but it doesn't appear that at this point anyone needs that, at this point. So we won't go into that. Any other questions or comments? If not, is there a motion to approve first reading?
So moved.
Alderman Morose, do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Ross, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? First reading passes. Mike, thank you very much. Our next item requests a first reading of Bill Number 20-08, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute supplemental agreement number 3 to the professional service agreement with LOR Engineering, LLC, DBA Cochran Engineering for engineering services for the Industrial Drive Improvement Project. City Administrator.
Yes, Mayor, members of the board. This is a request to, as the mayor said, execute agreement number 3. It really adds on to a specific task for Cochran. The board met last month and discussed whether our new construction project that we would start would be Osage Beach Road or industrial. And as if you recall, the consensus was to move forward with industrial. The project timeline has always been design engineering the first year, right away and then construction to follow suit. So there won't be any construction this year. It's just for clarity for those even listening. The costs are similar to, or actually the same as the revision that Cochran had proposed, because it was decided the sidewalks and a few other things were adjusted. So this agreement is a request for a total of $168,677 because it includes the construction engineering piece and the initial design. But this year, we have budgeted only the engineering and design work, which we have budgeted as $130 in that particular line item. There are a couple other small projects in that line item, but this particular thing came in at $96,387. So although I'm asking for execution of the entire supplement, the second part of that supplement will not happen until construction takes place in 22 or 23, depending on, our timeline.
All right, thank you. Questions or comments? Alderman Ross.
I'm not sure, can you explain, the supplement again is going to be done how?
Well, we do supplements to their master contract when
Okay.
there's specific projects. I've come to the board with a master contract that we've, chosen Cochran to be our city engineer. And if, in the original contract, I asked for a pot of money, so to speak, to do lots of different things through the years, or through the year in the budget. But when it comes to specific tasks, we like to identify those, and this is what it cost you for that particular task. So the following item is a specific task, just like we did the pavement maintenance plan. It makes accountability a little better, and it kind of helps us manage what we're paying them for.
I understand, I didn't quite hear it that way, so I apologize.
Okay.
The only question that I have is when do we expect that this design to be done so that it can go out to bid?
I am going to refer that to
I'm looking
Dave.
towards Dave.
I was going to say, okay.
I don't have a schedule. I think that's something that we would certainly work with the city to determine what they want the schedule to be. As Gina said, design is in 2021 and construction in 2022. If there's a certain date.
So when would be the optimum time to do construction in 2022?
22 or 23, depending on how right-of-way goes, is what we'd propose, but.
Or are we
what time
concerned
of
about
year?
right-of-way acquisition there? I didn't realize there was a right-of-way.
Without having the design done, I don't think we know at this point.
Okay.
I think we should always be concerned on a project of this size with right-of-way.
Oh, I think we should be concerned. I didn't think there was a right-of-way issue here. I'm sorry, I didn't think there were any. I thought we had sufficient right-of-way, so apparently we don't. That's my misunderstanding, I guess.
Are we saying we don't, or we just don't know?
I don't know.
So we could.
Okay.
We don't have
Well-
a design at this point, and to see how it fits in the existing right-of-way.
Well, I don't know that it's possible and feasible, but I would hope that we can get this design done so that it can go out to bid late fall, so that it can be going early spring, if not late winter next year. But I don't know that that's reasonable, but that was what I would hope for. That's all I have, thanks.
Anyone else? If not, is there a motion to approve the first reading?
Motion approved.
Alderman Becker, second, Alderman Rucker. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? First reading passes. Our final item on tonight's agenda requests a first reading of Bill Number 20-09, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to execute supplemental agreement number 4 to the professional service agreement with LOR Engineering LLC, DBA Cochran Engineering, for the completion of a conceptual sidewalk master plan for the city. City Administrator.
Yes, Mayor, members of the board. So we've also discussed this type of plan. We wanted to get through the pavement maintenance plan first and at our previous discussions, but I felt it important that we outline what we're getting and how much we're paying for a sidewalk master plan from Cochran. So this is a request to execute that agreement specific to a sidewalk master plan.
All right, thank you. Questions or comments? Alderman Ross.
Just one question, Dave. When do you think this will be done?
I believe Gina told us this will be done by, there's a retreat in June?
July, August.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, that'd be great. That's all I had. Thanks.
Anything else? Anyone else? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve first reading? Alderman Ross, do I have a second?
Second.
Alderman Morose, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? First reading passes. Now for communications, we start with the members of the board. Alderman Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be real quick. I just want to personally recognize Cindy Lay, however you say that. I said that wrong sometimes. She put a lot of work and effort. I think there were some people that helped her, and I may not be mentioning everyone, but the leadership meeting that we had this past Tuesday, thought went well. I know there's a tremendous amount of work going on in the background, but I thought that went really well, and I wanted to thank her for everything she did there. And other than that, everyone have a wonderful St. Pat's.
Oh,
I don't think we're back up with them, are we?
18th, we're back on the 18th,
Right.
so.
That's all I have, thank you.
Alderman Morose.
I have nothing. I did enjoy being at our leadership session the other day, and I really feel that many people that were there gained a lot of knowledge, and I think more so than anything is a lot of respect. And anyway, I thought it was well worth everybody's time. That's it.
Thank you. Alderman Osteen.
A few things. I scribbled down some notes prior to the meeting, so let me preface this by saying I didn't really formulate what I'm going to say. At the leadership seminar on Tuesday, I had the privilege to sit with Sergeant Joel Shelton. In that 30-minute idle chit-chat during lunch, I found out quite a bit about his background, both personal and professionally. That got me thinking about ways we could foster a more personal relationship with not just our city managers and supervisors, but also with the community. I believe the more you know about somebody, the more you get an idea about their motivation or their reasoning. In that same vein, familiarity breeds loyalty and understanding. So I would like for the city to be able to host more informal luncheons or social events where we would get a chance to interact with the city managers and supervisors and the board to find out more about them and change that from just a person with a name and title to who they really are. I also think it would be great, and this is something I just thought of, if we could, with our local publications, do something to spotlight our department heads, managers, and supervisors, just like the school districts do Teacher of the Week or Teacher of the Month. We could basically do something with our managers or supervisors or even board members, basically spotlighting an employee and therefore getting the community more involved in knowing who is running the city, who is involved with the decisions for what is going on that impacts their lives. All local publications are always looking for more articles, more things to put into the paper. So the Lake Sun Leader, the Business Journal, there are lots of publications we could actually probably, I'm sure at no cost, be able to give some more personal information or spotlight some of our departments or department heads. That's it.
All right, thank you. Alderman Walker.
I have nothing.
Alderman Becker.
I have nothing.
Alderman Rucker.
Yes, a couple of things. First of all, I want to thank the city for allowing me to be able to attend the use tax educational session through MML. It was very educational. I picked up a lot of things that expanded upon the knowledge that we had been given through here, through our attorney, and where some of the legislation is going. I have always been an advocate that we do the use tax to help replace the not only the funding that we're losing, but to help with put our local businesses that have brick and mortar structures here, be putting them on the same page, same leveling page as those that are that all they have here is an internet connection. So I have always supported it. And so I would just say that we need to stay tuned to the legislation as to what it passes. I know I read today there's some stuff they're trying to hang on to the bill that could mess it up, unfortunately, and that's generally what happens up there in Jeff City is when there's a good piece of legislation come through, everybody decides they want to hang their ornament on it, as they say. But we'll have to see what happens with that, and hopefully it doesn't deteriorate from that bill. So I think it's something we do need to keep our eye on and watch it as it goes through. And I would be an advocate that at some point, if the legislation is written the way I hope it would be, that we consider putting it on the ballot. But at this stage, I would not recommend putting it on the ballot right now because we may state the wrong thing on the ballot and then the legislation wording take it away from us. So That is one of the, probably the most important thing that I did learn in that seminar that I attended. So I just wanted to share with the board what that was. The other thing is Dave, looks like you're gonna be just on the hotspot with all kinds of information, please. Can you tell us where we're at with the Osage Beach Parkway extension?
Yeah, Gina may have more information on that than what I do. Gina, you should probably just step in.
Well, thanks, Dave. I'm trying to think that the last I knew, we've been, the money, the cost share's been approved. We got past that hurdle there. We're working through, and again, I guess it's Eric or who was putting that together. We've got the money, we've got everything. We're working through the grant process and outlining the task and when we do design and everything. And the last time I asked, like, well, what is the timeline? And they're like, well, design will be later in the year, and hopefully we could be building by 22 or 23.
Now,
Because we're working on, but we're still in that limbo of MoDOT's timeline with the grant application, the cost share, and the money before we move forward.
also.
Beyond that, I'll have to look.
If you could clarify for me, because there's a couple different ways this was gonna happen. Presently, the way we are is we will get all the money, not all, we will get money from the state, money from the road district, and money from our budget. And then we will hire someone
Yes.
to do the design work completely? Because I know at one point in this situation, a number of years ago, we were just gonna supply the money and MoDOT was gonna do all the work.
No, as far as the contract and the project will run like any other city contract and project. It is our project, we just happen to get funding sources to help subsidize the project. So as far as the management, the construction, the bidding, all that, it will be a city project like any other project.
So when do you think we'll get the green light?
Can I get back to you on that?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, Dave, once we get the green light, how long will it be before you'll be ready to put it out for bid? Baseball? 3 months, 6 months?
There was a schedule published for that, and I think I would also like to get back with you on that, because there was a specific schedule that was published as part of the cost share application, and I believe will be held to that schedule with MoDOT. So if I could circle back with Gina, and I'll get her that schedule, and then she can distribute that.
I
Appreciate
think
it.
I've got that in my email, Dave, too,
Okay,
so.
thank you.
On that subject, if I could, so can we start design now, or do we have to wait for MoDOT to tell us it's okay to start design?
We might wait for MoDOT. We're kind of tied, just like Dave said, that schedule, and that's even on the smallest little details.
Okay.
Plus right-of-way is an issue there, could be an issue there also.
Yeah, just like any other project, we've got to run those traps, but we also have MoDOT now kind of steering us along too, so.
I'm not sure who would field this question, but where are we at with applying and putting in place the road crew assistance program? I don't know how else to call it.
Well, the offender program.
Okay, yeah.
That's what it is. It's the offender
I didn't have the
program.
right terminology.
We were just talking about that today. Mike's going to circle back with them. The last word we got is, there's no offenders. We don't know when there will be. That may be months. They were, everything works a little slower. They know to call us, the lady that works with Cindy directly, but we're going to try to get some kind of timeline. If it's going to be a couple weeks, the governor opened up opened up restrictions, so we're hoping we see some aftermath of that. But we're not hopeful that it's going to be in the next few weeks, so we'll know more once they know more.
Do we have to go through another application process, so to speak, or since we've already been?
Not that I've been told, Cindy, that when we talked, it's really just we've been put on pause, and when they have offenders available that outside their restrictions, or they loosen up their restrictions, then they'll be available again.
That's a state program?
Yeah.
Okay, is there a county program?
Not when we checked, it'd be Camden County.
Whether
I
it's
know
our
Miller County
or another
doesn't.
county, that we go to that county and,
Well, we didn't check beyond our counties, that we were, our surrounding counties, so that would be could be a good question.
it's a good program that I believe has been beneficial to us.
Well, we're anxiously needing them and wanting them back, so we're just at their mercy.
COVID right now is the big issue with them.
Well, yeah, I'm sure. I know. With
Until they
everything, the way
loosen
it's
up their
breaking
COVID
loose.
restrictions, they will not be available, so.
Yeah, and getting the vaccination and so on and so forth.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
All right. City Administrator.
I have nothing. Nothing more.
City Attorney.
Just one thing to let you know, we have Annie, our new court clerk, has started, and seems to be reasonably happy and content being here. It's been a real pleasure to have hired an experienced court clerk that hits the ground running, which is appropriate. To make sure that she has her feet under her and our processes are smooth, Judge Smith has canceled the first docket, which would be next Thursday for the month of March. But we will have the second docket, which will be the fourth Thursday, which is March 25, and then we'll be back to our regular pace. It looks like municipal court will keep grinding on without a problem.
Thank you. City Clerk.
I'm good, thank you.
Chief.
As everybody knows, we had our polar plunge last weekend. All the plunge events and everything, we were able to raise over $177,000 for Special Olympics Missouri. We had 15 super plungers that did over 100,000. So,
Wow.
I'm pretty proud of the bunch of us that did that.
Kudos to our police department and, all of our officers and the participation. Not only did they do the plunge, they did Cops on Top. They had
We had the strut.
the 5-mile strut, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of effort and work that goes into that. I had the opportunity to be at the plunge, watching the 5 or 6 divers continue to move sheets of ice out of the way of the plungers. So it was quite an event. I was really, really proud of our super plungers for the amount of money that they not only were able to, raise, but several of our super plungers also plunged with some of the groups that they were with. So they not only plunged 24 times, some of them plunged another 2 to 3 more times. So if you can imagine getting into that cold water like that, it was
No, I can't
quite
imagine
an
that.
event. So I was glad that I, had volunteered as a judge, which is very appropriate as opposed to being in the water. 24. Yeah. City Treasurer.
We are currently adjusting to new auditors and with the new COVID environment, changing processes. Normally, the auditors would be here for field work the first month of March, or first week of March. But we are on schedule. They have all of our documents, just like we would always have ready, that we've got a shared portal to share those with. They will be making an appearance at some point to meet with management and some of the staff members, but it is going to be a total different process than what we've been used to in the past. But all indicators are that we're going to be on schedule, and in the long run, we should be able to prepare the same document in the same amount of time. So that's what we've got going on.
Thank you. Assistant City Administrator.
I do have a couple of things to share, Mayor. First, I want to just give the board an update on Truck 55. If you remember, during the budget process, we had asked to replace Truck 55, and the board had asked us instead to do our best to make some repairs to the truck and replace the bed. And specifically, Alderman Becker had asked me to look into looking at used options for beds. And Alderman Becker, I promise you, we tried. We spent almost 30 days. We checked junkyards all over central Missouri. We have checked online. We used Purple Wave. We used eBay. We found a close fits, and it was going to cost paint or repair than it would have just to buy a new bed. So I did recently get permission from Gina and the mayor to go ahead and order the new bed. The new bed should be in any day, and we'll be dropping the truck put on. So we did our best, sir. We couldn't find one, but that truck will be repaired in the next 2 to 3 weeks and be in use to help our transportation department continue program. If you'll notice, they've already started. We haven't stopped just because we don't have the truck. We have started, but once we get the truck, it's going to make things a lot easier, and I certainly do appreciate the board allowing us to fix this truck, so thank you very much. The second thing I want to do, and I did send you guys these letters earlier today, this is recognition to our guys, and did just a great job with a lady over on Laguna Beach Drive. We had a situation where she had asked us to turn off her water across her entire front yard. And it took us a while to find the meter even. We knew the general idea. Break the ice. Water shut off. Water on, and Tommy's quick action, water on, so we shut it off immediately, and we saved her a lot of damage and a lot of time in dealing with that. And so that was great for our guys. And I just want to point out, this is just one example of what our water department has had to deal with over the last 3 or 4 weeks. And it hasn't stopped. As the thaw has happened, we are finding a lot more of these meters that were frozen, and now they're unfrozen, and now they're leaking all over the place. So we are working very hard on that. The whole department, including Caleb DeVore and Brian Liddell as well, those guys have worked their butts off. They deserve the recognition that I'm giving them, and I just wanted to share that with you guys.
All right, thanks, Mike. All right, rest of staff is not here this evening. City planner's gone for the evening, so Mr. Van Leer.
You forgot.
Who? I just invited him up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just wanted to give a quick update on what we got going on some of the projects. I'll try to make this brief. We opened bids this past Tuesday for cleaning of the Passover Road water tower. We'll be bringing those bids to the March 18th meeting for award. So just to give you a heads up that that's coming. 2 other projects that are currently out to bid right now, one of those being Beach Drive. The plans are currently available to contractors. We'll be opening bids on March 9th. And bringing those bids to the March 18th board meeting, hopefully awarding at the March 18th meeting. The other project currently out to bid is the repairs to the Sands Lift Station. There's some equipment at Sands Lift Station we're going to be repairing. We'll be bringing those bids to the April 1st board meeting. So I'll be seeing some bids at the next handful of meetings we've got. Another project that's moving up in the queue for getting put out to bid is Wren Lane. We do have all 6 of the right-of-ways signed that we needed, so that's underway. Plan is to put that project out to bid late March, and then we will be bringing those bids to your May 6th board meeting. So just wanted to give you some of the highlights as to what we've got going on. If there's any questions on any of those projects or any of the other ones, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Dave? Dave, thank you very much.
Thank
Not
you.
only for your bringing us up to date, but answering some of the questions earlier in the meeting. All right, our business for this evening is complete, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Good comments, Bob. You know, in our Osage Beach, that newsletter, she often does have a picture of someone that has submitted, a crew member